Hello, everyone. I'm so excited to see you again. I'm so excited to start our read aloud for the brand new year of 2021. This week we are reading Rosie Revere Engineer by Andrea Beatty. And I can't wait to get started. I hope you're excited for it. I'm ready to start our next series of read alouds. So let's go ahead and get started.
Rosie Revere Engineer by Andrea Beatty, illustrated by David Roberts. This is the story of Rosie Revere, who dreamed of becoming a great engineer. In Lila Greer's classroom at Blue River Creek, young Rosie sat shyly, not daring to speak. But when no one saw her, she peeked in the trash for treasures to add to her engineer's stash. And late at night, Rosie rolled up her sleeves and built in her hideaway under the eaves.
Okay, so I have the first thing today, and it's just to look at what an eave is. We haven't heard that word before, so I thought it would be good if we had a little picture. An eave is the part between the roof and the building. It's looking like that, and it's the little opening. You can see it right here. This is the eave. So I just thought it would be good if we saw a little picture and described what that was. And then before break, I know we were talking a lot about informational text, right? Remember that? But today, we're not reading an informational text. We're reading a story. So throughout the whole story, I'm just going to say how we know that that's what it is. And the very first thing that I thought of is there's a character, right? In informational text, there's not a character, but in a story, there is. Here we have Rosie Revere. And throughout the rest of the story, that's when I'm going to pause and say, I'm going to let you know if there's any other ways. So let's just go ahead and read a little bit more.
Alone in her attic, the moon high above, dear Rosie made gadgets and gizmos she loved. And when she grew sleepy, she hid her machines far under the bed where they'd never be seen. When Rosie was young, she had not been so shy. She worked with her hair swooping over one eye and made fine inventions for uncles and aunts, a hot dog dispenser and helium pants. The uncle she loved most was zookeeper Fred. She made him a hat to keep snakes off his head, from parts of a fan and some cheddar cheese spray, which everyone knows keeps the pythons away. And when it was finished, young Rosie was proud, but Fred slapped his knee and he chuckled out loud. He laughed till he wheezed and his eyes filled with tears, all to the horror of Rosie Revere, who stood there embarrassed, perplexed, and dismayed. She looked at the cheese hat and then looked away. I love it, Fred hooted. Oh, truly I do. But Rosie Revere knew that could not be true. She stuck the cheese hat on the back of her shelf, and after that day, kept her dreams to herself.
All right, here's our next part. I wanted to talk about a couple other words. Let me scoot over a little bit, and let me get to my pen. Let's talk about this word perplexed. I don't know if we've ever heard that word before, but she stood there perplexed. She looked kind of confused. She didn't understand what was going on. That's what perplexed is. It means confused. And then we have our second word, dismayed. Dismayed is also a big word, and dismayed means surprised. So Rosie stood there embarrassed, confused, and surprised. That's what that sentence should say. And then I also know that this is a story because there were supporting characters, right? We saw a bunch of uncles and we saw some aunts. And I also know it was a story because it described Rosie's feelings. It says she felt embarrassed and she wanted to keep the dreams to herself. And then there was also a third feature, which is the problem. Stories usually have a problem. And we're going to figure out if Rosie's get solved. So this one, it says she wanted to keep her dreams to herself. That's a problem. Why would she want to keep all of that in instead of telling it to everybody? So we're going to go ahead and read a little bit more and see if we see any other features.
And that's how it went until one autumn day. Her oldest relations showed up for a stay. Her great-great-aunt Rose was a true dynamo who'd worked building airplanes a long time ago. She told Rosie tales of the things she had done and goals she had checked off her list one by one. She gave a sad smile as she looked to the sky. The only thrill left on my list is to fly. But time never lingers as long as it seems. I'll chalk that one up to an old lady's dreams. That night, as Rosie lay wide-eyed in bed, a daring idea crept into her head. Could she build a gizmo to help her aunt fly? She looked at the cheese hat and said, "No, not I." But questions are tricky and some hold on tight, and this one kept Rosie awake through the night. So when dawn approached and red streaks lit the sky, young Rosie knew just how to make her aunt fly.
So a daring idea crept into Rosie's head, and she figured out just how to make her aunt fly. This page is telling me about Rosie. How do you think you would describe Rosie right now? She's coming up with this idea, and she's deciding how to make her aunt fly. So how would you describe her? Go ahead and pause and think right now. How would you describe Rosie? I might say Rosie is creative, right? She thinks she has this idea about how to make her aunt fly. That makes her pretty creative. That's something that she's saying and something that she thinks she can do. So let's go ahead and read a little bit more.
She worked and she worked till the day was half gone, then hauled her cheese copter out onto the lawn to give her invention a test just to see the ridiculous flop it might turn out to be. Strapped into the cockpit, she flipped on the switch. The Helio cheese copter sputtered and twitched. It floated a moment and whirled round and round, then froze for a heartbeat and crashed to the ground. Then Rosie heard laughter and turned round to see the old woman laughing and slapping her knee. She laughed till she wheezed and her eyes filled with tears, all to the horror of Rosie Revere, who thought, "Oh no, never, not ever again will I try to build something to sputter or spin, or build with a lever, a switch, or a gear, and never will I be a great engineer." She turned round to leave, but then great-great-aunt Rose grabbed hold of young Rosie and pulled her in close, and hugged her and kissed her and started to cry. "You did it! Hooray! It's the perfect first try! This great flop is over. It's time for the next." Young Rosie was baffled, embarrassed, perplexed. "I failed," said dear Rosie. "It's just made of trash. Didn't you see it? The cheese copter crashed." "Yes," said her great aunt. "It crashed, that is true. But first it did just what it needed to do. Before it crashed, Rosie, before that, it flew." Your brilliant first flop was a raging success. Come on, let's get busy, and on to the next. She handed a notebook to Rosie Revere, who smiled at her aunt as it all became clear. Life might have its failures, but this was not it. The only true failure can come if you quit. They worked till the sun sneaked away to its bed. Aunt Rose tied her headscarf around Rosie's head and sent her to sleep with a smile ear to ear, to dream the bold dreams of a great engineer. We can do it! At Blue River Creek, all the kids in grade 2 build gizmos and gadgets and doohickeys too. With each perfect failure, they all stand and cheer, but none quite as proudly as Rosie Revere.
Okay, well, that was the end of our story, and I really hope that you enjoyed it this week. But before I go, there's one more thing I wanted to tell you. One last thing by how I knew this was a story. I knew it because there was a conclusion, right? Whenever we're doing our writing, we always have a conclusion. And I know that there was a feeling. Rosie was happy and she was smiling from ear to ear because she was proud. And then there was also a lesson learned. They were saying not to quit. So those were the other ways that I knew that this was a story. So we talked about there being characters, we talked about there being a problem, and we talked about there being a solution. And I hope you enjoyed the book as much as I did. I have our seesaw work for today. We only have 2 things, so you're going to record a video and choose a word to describe Rosie. And you're going to use an example from the story to support your thinking. So what did she do or say to make you think that? We did a little pause and think earlier about this, so maybe you can go back to that and pause at that part and think, what did Rosie do? What did Rosie say during this part to make me think that she was this example? And then your second thing is you're going to record a video and you're going to say, what is an engineer? So recording a video, what is an engineer? And recording another video, choosing a word to describe Rosie. So I really hope that you liked this story, and I can't wait to see you all later. Bye.